Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining for this webinar on decoding the economy and how it works. Speaker today is Dr. Pallavi Modi. She's a professor at SPJ in Mumbai, and she has like around 30 years of teaching experience and a published author. So yeah,
Yeah.
the webinar is organized by the Happy to Help group. I have sent out the website URL on the chat window, and once the webinar is over, maybe one of us can take us through what the platform is and what the intent of the group is. But without taking too much time, I'll hand over to ma'am. And ma'am, if you can move to your deck and take over.
All right.
And I would request everybody
Let,
to be on mute. And if there are any questions, you can unmute yourself, or you can put that up in the chat window, and I will moderate that.
all right.
Thanks.
How many minutes you want me to have
Ma'am,
it?
so normally what we do is, so we do like around 40-45 minutes of
Of
the
presentation.
conversation,
All
yeah,
right.
and then we do questions. But if we want to do a more interactive session with questions in
That's
between, then
what.
we can,
That's what.
we,
That's
we
what I
can,
was looking for.
yes.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
would
no,
rather have an interactive session than a one-way
sure.
classroom thing. And that's the reason. In fact, I was not keen on even presenting something. But fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah, let's go
we
ahead
can do that, ma'am.
and
We have time.
yeah, yeah.
We have
In
time till
between,
8 o'clock, so whichever way is fine.
we'll stop and we'll take questions. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yeah.
Decoding the economy, I mean, it's a kind of a jargon, and how it works is a question. Most of the people who belong to the non liberal arts segment, basically by liberal arts, I mean sociology, politics, economics, etc. People who have studied that are quite clear about what's happening, but people from engineering, medical, architectural background are unaware of what's happening. And this kind of requests are often, I find this kind of requests often because people want to understand how it works. Uh, how many of you have studied economics somewhere in some of your career? I would like to use the chat box. You to use chat box. Have you all
Maybe you know
studied economics at any point of time? Yeah. No. Yes. Happy to help. Anybody else? Economics at any point of time? Maybe school, maybe at the college level. Okay. I get Sujata as yes and happy to help as yes, Tanmaya as no, and so on. I guess I take it as the group has not studied economics, and so I would be presenting on the basis of. All right. So when I'm talking about economy and how it works, it is a simple thing like all of us have seen this news. In quarter one, the economy has contracted by 23.9%. What does this mean? Everybody, because of the COVID-19, is aware that the economy has gone into a kind of a standstill. Never before explaining macroeconomics was this easy because we used to get news, and most of the time it was very difficult for me to explain to the students that some of the sectors are not doing well. So, what is economy? What do you think is the economy? Would it mean the restaurants and the movie theaters and the transport system that is under lock, and most of the offices under lock right now, and therefore the economy is down? What do you think is economy? Does it mean we are not eating? Does it mean the food is not produced? Does it mean it is not reaching to our place? What is it that COVID 19 has done to the economy? That's a question that we all are wondering. And we know that GDP is one measure of the economy, that is gross domestic product. And it is nothing but total market value of all the final goods and services produced in an economy in a given period of time. So when I'm talking about GDP of India, I'm trying and looking at every possible product and service that is made in India. It starts from wheat and rice and dal to tomato ketchup and juices and cheese to vessels and whatever we are using in our everyday life to the restaurants and movie theaters and IT services and our exports, whatnot. Whatever is made in India is what we are trying and looking out is. And so we are trying and finding out the total market value of goods. Now one wonders, how do you find market value of such diverse products? How do you add wheat to IT service or to automobile? And so a simple mechanism or a simple technique is used that all the goods are taken one by one. Think about an Excel sheet where you are putting quantity of each good. Multiply it by their prices and you will get the value of that good. Let me come to our example. Say for example 100 million tons of wheat, 100 tons of wheat multiplied by 20 rupees, the price would give me value of wheat. Similarly, number of cars made multiplied by their prices would give me the automobile number and so on. Now, you people are in the IT background, and so summation of this varied goods and services is very easy with our Excel sheet. And so, what we would get is market value of all the final goods and services produced in the economy in a given period. Now, the news is talking about Q1, that is April, May, June for India, that is Q1, and the GDP has contracted by 23.9%. It has never happened in history of India that our GDP contracts. I would like all of us to react. With COVID, the world GDP is expected to shrink in 2020. There are estimates, and COVID-19 is not only India's problem, it is a worldwide problem, and we all are aware that world GDP is expected to shrink somewhere between 5 to 10%. The number goes on varying, mainly because we don't know, it's not yet over, and how much more damage is left. So, when I'm talking about world GDP, the same exercise is done in each country, what we did in India, and the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund would add each individual country's GDP to arrive at the world GDP, and that is expected to shrink in 2020. Are you with me? The world economy is going in recession, that is registering negative GDP growth in the current year 2020. It did so in our memory in 2008 after the financial crisis. It went into negative for two consecutive quarters in that year, and after that, that is after 12 years, this is happening again. Most of the time, if you look at the chart of the world economy, somewhere in 1929, it had registered a negative rate of growth and for a prolonged period of time, which was known as Great Depression. It happened in 2008, which was called a V-shaped recession. Now, with COVID-19, we really don't know whether it is going to be a V-shaped recovery, that is, it would touch the negative for a quarter or 2 quarters and zoom back, and we would have a positive growth. At current point of time, nobody knows that. The politicians would want to pacify the people, and most of the political leaders are giving out the statement. Nirmala Sitharaman has given the statement today that ours is going to be a V-shaped recovery. So, when we are talking about GDP of India, it is estimated about $3 trillion. Now, I go back to my method of calculation. We have made all the goods and services, we have found value of all the goods and services and added them together. We are getting a number in Indian rupees somewhere around 200 lakh crore. It's little more than that, 200 lakh crore. Now, at the prevailing interest exchange rate, which is 73, 74, you divide that number and what you get is a 3 trillion in terms of US dollar. Are you with me? GDP of India is estimated first in Indian rupee. So would all countries would do to their own GDP calculation in their own currency. Finally, in order to make it comparable with the rest of the world, what is done is it is converted in terms of US dollar, and so internationally GDP is denominated in one currency, that is US dollar, and that's the reason why we know how big or how small we are compared to the other economies. Now, India is currently fifth largest economy in the world. Is that a news, or it's been coming in the newspapers every now and then? Mr. Modi is fondly talking about the fifth largest economy of the world as India, and we all are proud of that. You know, I mean, I consider it as अपनी भी गिनती अभी 5 में हो रही है. You know, when you are counted among the top 5, you feel good about it, you feel happy about it. Now, when I am coming to the numbers for the top 4 economies who are higher than us are, US is, I've just eliminated all decimals and brought them in the rounded figures. So US economy is 21 trillion, China at 14, Japan at 5, Germany at 4, and the fifth one, India, is at 3. Now, these are 2019 numbers that I have, and in 2020, depending upon how much each economy contracts, we would have the new number about the contraction. India's economy is expected to contract by 5%. US is expected to contract by 10%, and so on. So, I hope you are with me in terms of this large numbers. What does this mean for India? 1 minute. I would like to go back and have a kind of a chat with you. Are you all with me? What am I talking? Are you able to? You have any questions? I'm talking about the GDPs of the country in terms of US dollars. Are you with me? Yeah.
You can
Anybody
unmute
want to
yourself.
talk now? You are free to talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Renu? Anybody would want to talk about it? No? That's
Ma'am, if
not.
there are no questions, then maybe something to discuss would be like, see, this is the notional value, right? This is the nominal value, right? I mean,
Right.
so
These are
compared
nominal
to maybe
values.
the correct compare, so where we are fifth, right? And then we look at maybe per capita
Correct.
GDP and they're like 100 and
Correct.
something. So maybe if
Correct.
you could talk about that and how that
All
actually
right.
impacts people, right?
All right.
That
All right.
impacts people as in common man, service class. How much does it impact?
All right.
And what will?
All right.
Yeah,
All
I think Deep's question is slightly different. Deep is asking like this contraction of 23 or percent, right? How does that impact?
Okay.
So maybe you can address
I'll
that.
come to
then
both.
maybe-
I'll come to both. Okay. Um,
We are still able to see the screen, ma'am. So if you don't want to present this also, yeah, this was okay. This one.
all right. Now, when we are looking at India as the fifth largest economy, would you mean to say that India is going to be that rich? Uh, there are 190 countries of the world, and only 16 countries are having the value more than 1 trillion. The remaining countries are less than $1 trillion. So that's a kind of a thing when you are looking at the world, very clearly you have to put it in your mind. The second important thing that what we are looking at is our per capita income. Are we the fifth largest, richest economy? No way. No way we are the fifth richest economy, mainly because to this 3 trillion, you have to divide for the per capita income 1.3 billion people. And that's how our per capita income reduces to as low as $2,000 compared to $60,000 of US or $10,000 of China or about $40,000 of Japan or about $50,000 of Germany, which means there is a long gap between the per capita income of India compared to the per capita income of these rich countries. Over the period of time, probably China and India are catching up faster, and this decade has seen us catching up faster. But the question here is, what happens to India, and how this contraction, or how is the world going to deal with it? Is India an emerging economic power? In the next 5 to 10 years period, do you see India as an emerging power? And this is an important question for all of us, for all our IT experts, for all our exporters, because is the world economic order changing? We have seen the period for last 50 years where the Western economies have called the shots. They are the rulers of ideas and of technologies and of innovations, and they have called the shots. And so, if you look at the world map, Asia was on a side and Europe was at the center, and on the other side there was USA. What has happened in the current period is the center of the world has come, or rather, Asia has come at the center of the world. What has happened is China and India, because they have grown so much in the last 10 years, if I talk about numbers, India's economy in 1990 is not that far off. You all must have been born around that time. India's economy was $300 billion and China's economy was $400 billion. From there, India's economy has become 3,000 billion. 3 trillion is 3,000 billion, and China's economy has become 14,000 billion, that is 14 trillion. Are you able to gauge the kind of change that has happened? And if I talk about Germany or Japan in that same period, there has been a marginal difference in the quantum of the GDP. And that's the reason why India and China have come at the center of the world. And that's the message for the macroeconomy, the world macroeconomy. I want to give it out to this group that the world economic order is changing and India and China are coming in the forefront. Now, talk about the COVID impact. Yes, the COVID impact is impacting everyone, all the economies of the world, and all of them are going to shrink. Probably it will take a year or two for the recovery to come back. Now, is India ready to play an important role as far as this recovery is concerned? Think about India's IT sector. Between 2009 or 2000 and now, what has happened is India has IT sector has led India's exports and thereby the growth. What is next coming to the line? Pharma sector and the food sector and the other technology sector also is coming next to the fore, and probably India would be supplying to the rest of the world these products that I have been talking. And so, and the next change that we are all expecting and hoping that it comes true, in the last 20 or 30 years, China became the manufacturing hub of the world. All the multinationals, all the large corporations went to China to make products in China for export to the rest of the world. The logic was simple because China provided the cheap labor facilities along with the infrastructure and all. The time has come that India is waiting in the line, and with China bashing or China's soft power reducing in the current period, what has been happening is the multinational companies are expected to shift out of China. Well, there are others in the line like Vietnam, Indonesia, and others, but India is also a good candidate. If you have read today's paper, Japanese government are giving perks to the Japanese companies to relocate to India in form of some sort of a support. Large number of, Foxconn and other Apple manufacturers have already shifted to India. Large amount of electronic manufacturers have already shifted to India, and the trend has already gotten stronger and stronger. If you are seeing the Geo platforms resource mobilization in last 3 months, the who is who of world is ready to partner with India whether it is Google or Microsoft or Facebook or whatever you talk about, and they are ready to partner with India. So, if I talk in Hindi and say, "Abhi apni bari hai," tighten your belts, be ready. It's apni bari now. You know, it's like apna time aaya hai, kind of a thing. And so, here is a takeoff thing. India is on a takeoff stage, and probably what we will see in the next few years or in the next period is something what China showed to the rest of the world. Becoming a superpower, becoming a manufacturing power, and thereby, right now, China is ambitious to become a superpower. If China is at 14 trillion and has the expansionist policies, probably they will also succeed. I'm not at all in an illusion that India's rise is accompanied by China's fall. No, it's not going to happen that way. China would continue to rise, but India would rise at a faster rate than China and probably catch up. We are yet at $3 trillion, and there is large room or large reshuffle in the world which is going to take place where India would become a prominent place. Now, the second important reason, besides this change in the political power, is there some disturbance going on? Is our demographic. You know, India happens to be the youngest country at this point of time. The average age in India is 27.9 compared to 47 in Germany and Japan, and entire Europe more than 40, and somewhere around 36 is US. US is low mainly because of immigration policy that younger people are getting added to their system, and that's how their average age has not gone as high as any of the European economies. What is that advantage of being young in the world? Number one, because we are young, we have the capacity to consume and we have the capacity to work. The two things for the advanced, richer countries, a person who is in his 40s and 50s he is in a state of mind, been there, done that. There is nothing more that they can consume. They have houses, they have cars, they have been there, they have taken vacations. They have done everything what contributes to the economic growth. But in India, we are hungry. We are hungry yet for a house, a decent house, car, a good vacation, a good office space. Our urban infrastructure needs to improve. Our entire connectivity needs to improve. What I mean is there are so many pending things to be done in India. Not only in our own lives, but also in the country. And as a result of that, there is a lot of room for expansion of GDP. That is what India is going to catch up. India is going to provide consumers to the world. So, whether it is your Audi or BMW or Mercedes-Benz who are looking for the next neo-rich people who would buy their cars, it would be Indians. Whether it is your entire infrastructure development companies of Japan or USA or Germany, they are most welcome in India to develop the infrastructure, whether it is your metro system, whether it is your bullet trains or whatever you are talking about. There is enough room for this upgrading the country requirement for us. And so there is room for that. And the consumers are going to lap up, and that's how our GDP is going to grow at a fastest possible rate. How does it help now if we are convinced that this is now apna time aaya hai? How does it help me to decode the economy? I'm taking very, very simple things which are affecting me or you as an individual. I'm moving from when I, as a business head, look at the GDP numbers, can I predict my top line growth? If you are in your business, you are continuously looking at what's going to be your GDP, your top line for the current year. Maybe in the current year, you have accepted that the growth is not going to be that great because of the COVID situation, unless you are in pharma, unless you are into IT related, like this Zoom and Google and all this service provider, where they have seen an unprecedented growth. Or you are into the delivery systems of Zomato or Swiggy, or where they have seen the unprecedented growth. So, when I, as a business head, look at the GDP numbers, can I predict my top line growth? After knowing what sector I am and how the economy is doing, will I be able to predict my growth number? If last year I have grown by 10% or 15%, depending upon what sector I am, is it possible for me to predict that this year I'll grow at 20%? What is that GDP supporting my top line? You know, I'm often reminded of the walkway on the airports. The speed of the walkway on the airport is GDP number. If the speed is, say, at 6% of GDP growth, that GDP growth of 6% is the speed of the walkway. Even if I don't do anything and just stand there, I am transported from one level to another level. Meaning, even if I don't strategize anywhere, do anything to grow my top line, my my top line should increase by at least the GDP numbers, and that would be 6% of GDP growth plus 4% of inflation would make it 10%. Meaning, kuch bhi kiye bina, I must grow at 10% per annum. Now, the question is, I'm an ambitious entrepreneur and I'm not happy to be, or I'm not satisfied when my top line grows by 10%. That is the normal, anybody standing on the walkway is going to get it. So what do? I strategize. I start walking on the walkway. Will I cover the distance in a shorter period of time? Yes, we all do that, right? We are in a hurry. We want to reach home faster, and we don't stand on the walkway on the airports. We start walking. And that's what we do here in the world also. Meaning, if I'm expecting the GDP numbers to be good, there are more than proportionate chances of my top line increasing at a much higher rate. If GDP numbers are low or negative, maybe I have to additionally strategize my business. And that's how all the businesses, all the business head, all the time have their one eye on the GDP numbers. You open any company's annual report, the first para always reads, because the GDP of the country rose at such and such level, We are happy to announce that your company has grown at a faster than that. Read that, and if they have not managed to do that, then there would be an apologetic tone that because the GDP numbers were not that good, we could not maintain that rate of growth, and we will do that next year. So, this is the connection between you and me or any business head and the GDP number. The second connection, can I answer these simple questions that puzzle me? Simple question is, should I buy car outright or on EMI? What is it that I am looking here between the outright purchase of the car and buying it at EMI? Normally in a class, I would want people to respond. What is it that we are looking at when I am looking at buying the car at EMI? Yeah, you can say that or you can type it out. When you are doing at EMI, what is it that you are calculating? The interest rates, excellent, and the inflation, excellent. So, what are you able to see my screen half? Yeah?
No, ma'am. If you don't
No?
share the
Okay. Okay. Fine. So,
we can see the chat.
Yeah, you can see the text.
Yeah, we can see the chat, but not the. Yeah, we can see the PPT now. Yes.
Okay, fine. So, should I buy the car outright or should I buy on EMI? My answer to this is nothing but the interest rates. Are the banks giving me the car loan at, say, 12% per annum and my EMI is calculated on 12%? Or with current RBI lowering the rate of interest, is the car loan is available at 8% per annum? Are you with me in terms of my cost of buying the car in terms of interest drastically reduced when I'm getting the loan cheaper at 8%? And so I'm lured to buy it on EMI because EMI has various other advantages. I don't have to give money outright, and the bank loan is also not that high, plus I'm getting my taxation benefits also. Meaning, let me take the second question. I was on a foreign trip recently and I have some US dollars left with me. Should I convert my US dollar back into rupees or should I keep it in dollar terms only? What am I looking at? Yes, I'm looking at the exchange rate. Currently, the exchange rate of India, after reaching 76, 77 to a dollar, has gone back and has become 73, 74. So if I had converted my US dollars when it was 76, 77, I would have got more money. But now when I convert, I'm going to get less money. Now this is a question all our IT firms are daily grappling with. Convert kare ya na kare? The third question is, should I buy or sell in the stock market? The market is in the range of 38, 40 currently. Is it a good time to buy or is it a good time to sell? Now, my question to all of you is, are you having any definite answer for any of these questions that I'm posing? Not. Neither do I have a definite answer, nor any expert in the country have a definite answer on this. Because nobody knows how do we handle our life then. We just need to understand the macroeconomy and take a view or buy a story. The story is, for example, for the first question, should I buy the car outright or on EMI? The story that I'm ready to buy is, or I'm buying right now is, the EMI would further go down, possibly because the RBI may make the interest rate further low. Or the second story is, RBI is pushing banks to lower the interest rates further. That's a story. Whether it will happen or it won't happen, I don't know, or nobody knows. But that's a story. Am I buying that story? Then probably I will buy the car on EMI on the next opportunity when the interest rates are lower. The second question, am I buying the story that rupee is going to become now from 73 to 72 to 70? That's one story. Lot of money is going to come in India in the current period because we are opening up. And so when a large amount of foreign exchange comes in the country, the value of rupee is going to go higher. And that's the reason why from 76, 77, rupee has become 73. Now, are you buying the story that inflow of US dollar in the economy is going to continue and therefore rupee would strengthen to 70? Or are you buying the story that rupee eventually all this year, every year weakens by 4 to 5%? That's another story. Because inflation in India happens to be higher than inflation in USA. And therefore, in order to remain at that parity level, India has to devalue. Now, these are two conflicting stories which are given to me by logic of macroeconomy. One about inflation, another about inflow and outflow of dollars in India. Now, which story I'm buying? It's important to learn and understand so that we can take an informed view. What I'm trying to help you or trying to convey to you is there are no eternal truths. It all depends upon what story are you buying. What is it that you are looking at and how are you taking your position? Are you taking your position that rupee is going to appreciate? Are you taking your position that interest rates are going to go down? Then you would have different recommendation. But what you learn by understanding this dynamics is you learn to take an informed view. And that informed view is a very, very important part of the story that you need to take. I would want to talk to you people. Yeah. Are you with me in terms of what am I talking in terms of macroeconomic parameters? Interest rates, inflation, exchange rate. These are determined by nothing but they are determined by the macroeconomic impacts. Say, for example, interest rates are determined by the supply of funds from savers and demand for funds from investors. For example, exchange rate is determined by inflow of dollars in India by foreigners and outflow of dollars from India by the importers. Are you with me? And so that inflow and outflow would determine the value of rupee in the international market. Now, when you are in business, when you are the consumers, how would you take an informed decision is nothing but being aware to this macroeconomy. I would like you to react for me to carry on further. Nikhil is talking about YOY inflation rate within India over the last 2 decades has been 11 to 12%. Nikhil, I would differ. The YOY inflation in the last 2 decades has been somewhere around 6 to 8%. Maximum 6. It has gone down to, in the recent periods, in the last 5 years, to as low as 3 and 4% as well. All right. Anybody else? You can talk also by unmuting yourself. You can talk by unmuting yourself.
Ms. Pallavi, Nikhil here.
Yes, Nikhil.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for me to learn a little more about how inflation rate really calculated. So, is there any specific way in which we actually arrive upon what the inflation rate is year on year?
Okay.
If you could give an example, maybe that would help.
All right. The question here is, how is inflation measured? Right? Nikhil, are you right? That's what you are trying to say?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All right. Okay. Now we want to measure the inflation in the current period with, say, future. All right. Now, what government has is a consumer price index. Now, consumer price index is made up of, number one, the food and the basic items. The 50% of the weight of that is given to food and basic items, which would mean it would include all possible food items, starting from potatoes to wheat to milk to butter to eggs to whatever, right? Now, the prices of food on 5th of September 2020 are noted for all the goods, okay? The same prices on 5th of October, what is the difference in that is worked out. Now, the other 50% weight is given to the food items, 10% weight is given to transport, the 10% weightage is given to the electricity and things like that, and another 20 to 30% are given to the manufactured items. That is the weighted system of consumer price index. So, somewhere around, I'm forgetting the number, but they are tracking some 1400 products on a month-to-month basis. Price of one product in the current period compared to the price on 5th of August, on 5th of July, on 5th of whatever. Every month they are tracking the price. Now, how do you come at the inflation number? The inflation number, let me give an example. Potatoes, suppose last month were sold at 10 rupees a kilo. This month, the price of potato has increased to 15 rupees a kilo, meaning there is a 50% rise in the price of potato, right? But depending upon the weightage potato has on my consumer price index, the index would change. Do you remember the prices of onions rising, and as a result of it, consumer price index had shot up last year? And you know that during the times of election, this is a technique where the oppositions try to create the artificial shortage and make inflation of the necessary products. Are you getting that connection in your mind? So,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
yeah. So what happens is all these products on the basis of the consumer price index are tracked. The change in the prices is worked out depending upon the weight of that product in the basket or in that groups. The change in inflation is worked out. All right. So that is called CPI or Consumer Price Index. Now, when we look at CPI over a period of time, what you mean to say is that maybe in 90s and early 2000s, our consumer price indexes were as high as 11 to 12%. Meaning every year in our GDP calculation, the prices would play a very important role because सब कुछ महंगा हो गया है. But over the last 10 to 15 years period, we have understood the importance of managing the inflation, controlling the inflation, and RBI currently has a 4 to 6% inflation tolerance band. Meaning, if the inflation goes above 6%, RBI comes out with its tools to control the inflation. If it goes below 4%, then RBI releases its tools to increase the inflation. Why is it that we want to have a 4% inflation? Inflation is considered as a tonic to GDP. Because suppose you are into this potato business. Every year when you are working out or you are a farmer of potatoes, when you are sowing the potatoes, you definitely want a price higher than what the price is currently. That would incentivize you to produce more. And so, for a growing economy, if inflation would have been flat, zero, then nobody would have any incentive because if prices don't rise, my profit don't rise, and what's the big point? So, for India, incentivizing on a massive scale is with 4% inflation. Companies, manufacturers, farmers, all of them, on an average, across the board, are incentivized by this 4%. All right. Any other question?
I think Dweep has a question on
Yeah, Dweep?
investing in.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. That's my last slide. So I was just wondering. I'm coming to that.
Madam, one question
So,
I have.
So,
Hello.
Pallavi ma'am, okay,
Yeah.
does Chandrakant have a question here?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll come back. Yeah.
yeah, madam.
Yes, tell me. Yeah,
Just now
Chandrakant,
you
tell me.
said that the inflation. The inflation is relating to the GDP. It's the GDP is. You say that 4% inflation is required to maintain the GDP, but if we
To
consider
increase the GDP.
increase the GDP. But now
Correct.
just I am looking at the Italian economy. The inflation rate compared is very, very low. Still their GDP and their these countries
GDP
are
growth.
better.
See, that the world is divided into two categories. There are developed countries who have already developed in the past, and if you look at their growth rates, it is between 1.5%, or if you look at Japan, it is stable. You know, for last 20 years, Japanese economy has been in the range of 4.5 trillion to 5 trillion. The rate of growth for many, many years has been close to zero. The reason is they have reached to that saturation level. Most of the European economies currently are also have reached to the saturation level, and therefore what has happened is there is no growth happening. Why is everybody looking at India? Because India is growing.
Growth of
And that is where the return on investment is coming. Let me do my last slide and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
Now, I'm coming to your investment question. Should I buy or sell in the stock market? Sensex has risen from 5,000 to 40,000 in past 20 years, giving a compound annualized growth rate of 11%. Sensex has risen from 25,000 to 40,000 in past 5 years with CAGR of 10%. Look at this number. Is there a relation between Sensex and GDP? 2006, India's GDP crossed 1 trillion mark. The Sensex crossed 10,000 mark. 2014, India's GDP crossed 2 trillion mark and Sensex crossed 22,000 mark. 2020, that is the current year, we have already crossed India's GDP. This is number for March 2020. India's GDP crossed 3 trillion mark and the Sensex crossed 40,000 mark. Now, if I look at these numbers are over a long run period. What do I have to say about investment? I'm talking about a long term. Yeah, I'll answer Rujita's question. Is there a problem if there is no growth? If the countries can keep providing what people need, do they need to grow as well? No, the countries, you are right, Rujita, if the countries have reached to that welfare state level, like Scandinavian countries, like Japan, like some of the European countries, it is fine if they don't grow and they sustain their level of activity, sustain their level of GDP. And that's what they are all. Their targets are not to grow at 7% and 8%. Their targets are to maintain the GDP level. So it's fine. But India can't afford to do that, mainly because we have half of our people who are hungry yet. So how can we say that if we don't grow, it's okay? Right?
Yes, I guess I was not asking for India. I was just asking a general question, as in,
Correct.
Of course, India can't do that.
India can't do that, and India can't have those.
But is it okay for Japan? Also, was my question actually. The question
Yeah,
came
it is.
because
It is okay for Japan not to grow. It's the choice that a country makes, you know.
Okay.
And the rest of the countries are behind Japan, talking about no growth, no investment opportunities, and so on and so forth. They are sustaining the level of living, and which is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Now, if you are an investor, where do you see your investments going in India? Why is rest of the world interested in India?
If
What,
I may,
what do you think would
Pallavi.
be? Yeah, Nikhil.
So from what I've read so far, I think when you look at China's, I would like to give an example of China here. China, when it actually grew, it was the hub for manufacture, right? Because the labor
Correct.
was cheap in there, and the
Correct.
company and the direct investment policies from foreign countries was such
Correct.
that it became kind of conducive for foreign nationals to actually foreign organizations to come and invest in there.
Correct.
start a factory there, put up a manufacturing plant, and also at the same time open the retail stores there so that the goods can be easily moved without without
True.
much operational cost. The same
True.
is the case with India as well, especially after Make in India, when the whole efforts are being actually put into making the business
True.
environment more conducive for foreign countries.
Absolutely. And for the nationals also.
Yeah. So manpower we have, it will give people the opportunity to grow, have a job.
True.
At the same time, it will also help in actually upskilling our labor who maybe do not
True.
have the expertise. So I think in the
True.
long run, I feel India, it has the manpower. It will, if the policies of the government and to trade and to set up or to have operational existentials in order, if all of that
Yeah.
is married together, India is definitely the next hub because China is kind of saturated in today's day and age.
True, absolutely. You are right. Your reading, your conclusion is right that China is moving towards the saturation. And if you have read recently, they have come up with looking inward policy, meaning they want to redirect their production to uplifting the consumption within the economy. So, which is a right thing to do in the current environment. So, Chinese have rightly shifted their focus from export to domestic economy. Okay, Krishna Kumar is asking me, does real estate has a direct relationship? How to decide to buy real estate? Basically, real estate also has a connection with the greater economy or GDP. Unfortunately, we are stuck up with some rules and regulations which has made the sector look not prosper, and we are in a kind of a financial mess, as a result of which the sector is not moving. So if it gets unclogged, it's the best sector because real estate is also an asset class, and that asset class would definitely move. Chandrakant is in India, there is scope for growth. Yes, there is scope for growth. Yeah. Any other?
Ma'am, maybe one question from my end. So, I think most of us are in IT and export
Yeah.
dominant industry, right? So, I know you touched on 2008 as a recession, which was more global, and people who are not in IT didn't kind of suffer much. So, maybe if you could talk to the like the export-oriented industries perspective on what the impact is, and also maybe the inflation thing that you spoke about, right? How that impacts people who are actually more dominantly exporting rather than maybe selling inside the country.
Okay. What I see currently in India happening is there are export promotion, and exporting companies would do well, which goes without saying, and so the newer sectors are getting added to that. Like IT, pharma is getting added to, and the manufacturing. If India attracts manufacturing, maybe even of electronics items like smartphones and laptops, etc., then it's a big, huge business. The volume wise, it's a huge business. So, export orders as well as consumption in the domestic economy would make this both things do well. The third important thing about inflation, what you are saying is, personally speaking, I feel if inflation is managed between 4 to 6%, which over the last 10 years we have been managing, and it's not such a big thing that is getting out of hand. It's managed well, and in fact managed to the level of getting frustrated that even if inflation is not there, RBI is not lowering the rate of interest, or RBI is not following the policies which are growth promoting, because they've become very, very strict about inflation. So currently at this juncture in time, inflation is not an important, or rather a irritant in India's macroeconomy.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. It
Thanks,
was really
ma'am.
good. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you for it.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
All,
maybe we'll take 2 minutes before we close the webinar and just kind
yeah,
of
please
talk
go
about
ahead. Yeah.
what the platform is. Om, do you want to share the screen and do this?
Yeah, Atul, I'm doing it. So, ma'am, thank you so much
Ma'am,
again. It was really, yeah.
Should I take an exit?
no, ma'am, you can just you can stay on, ma'am. We'll just take 2 more minutes and then we'll close the.
All right. All right.
Yeah, so thank you, ma'am. It was really a great session, and thank you everyone for
Thank you.
joining the same. Yeah, so basically, we started this initiative called Open Mentoring Group during the COVID. We were thinking how we can connect people to learn from each other. So that's how we kind of started this initiative. Uh, so there are three formats of this initiative. One is the Let's Talk, wherein we connect mentors to mentee one-on-one. Then there is a webinar and the open discussion. These are the certain topics which we started with, and then you can find a few mentors against each topic.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk to any of the mentors here, let's say if I want to talk to Atul, I can just check Atul's calendar. So basically we have requested all our mentors to donate some time, maybe 1 hour per week, wherein if somebody wants to talk to you one-on-one, they can go and schedule their session. They'll have to just share their name, email, and the questions they want to ask, and then their LinkedIn URL, so that mentor can get to know about the mentee. Also, if you feel like joining us, then there is a link wherein you can register with us as a mentor, and you can also contribute in helping us in this initiative. Here you would find a link of webinar which is happening every week. So every Saturday we conduct a webinar 7 to 8 p.m. And also here you can find all the mentors at one place. So whoever has joined us as a mentor, you will find their calendar here. You will find a brief introduction about them, wherein you get to know a brief of what they do and how they can help you.
Okay.
There are certain platforms wherein we are there, like we are almost there on each kind of popular social media platform. So basically we don't push email for any of this webinar. We do post on each of this platform that this would be our next webinar, and this would be the topic and the registration link. So we would request you to follow any of this wherever you are comfortable. Also, we are recording our session, and that will go on YouTube. So you can find our any of the sessions which are which have happened so far. So you will find that on YouTube. And of course, I think Atul must have shared a feedback link. If you have anything, any suggestion for us, or any feedback about the session, about the mentor, or if there are any topics which you want us to cover, then please do write to us. If you have any suggestions, there is an email here, hello@happy to help. You can send us an email. To know more about us, you click on this link and you will be redirected to a PPT which has a detail of why we started and what is our goal. And the last thing I want to say, it's completely non-profit. We are not making any money out of it, and we don't want to make any money out of it. It's just that we wanted to have a platform wherein we can connect professionals so that they can share their experience, their knowledge, their expertise with others. So yeah, thank you, Atul. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Om. So I have shared the feedback link. I would request you to please fill that up. It's just 2-3 questions, mostly multiple choice, so it's quite fast. Yeah, I think with that we can end the webinar, ma'am. It was really informative. I really like the airport walking thing. That was a really nice metaphor. Yeah. I'll use it somewhere. So
Okay.
thanks, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Thanks
Okay.
everyone for joining. We'll close the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks all.